Let's just define what is high blood pressure to begin with. And sorry, I'm just going to turn to this slide. Okay, so high blood pressure or hypertension is defined as sustained elevated arterial blood pressure measured indirectly by an inflatable cuff and pressure manometer. Hypertension can involve many organ systems, including the heart, endocrine organs, kidneys, etc. And usually, the blood pressure must be measured on 2 or more separate visits before a diagnosis of hypertension is made. So 1 or 2 times having high blood pressure is not enough to determine that you have high blood pressure or hypertension. Okay, so dietary factors affecting hypertension. In virtually every epidemiologic study of blood pressure throughout the world, investigators have found strong correlations between body mass and blood pressure and between obesity and hypertension. Loss of weight by obese hypertensive individuals is associated with reduction in blood pressure, especially during active weight loss. And a lot of these studies come from the National Library of Medicine. Other lifestyle factors include wine, especially. So in population studies, consumption of more than 2 alcoholic drinks per day has generally been associated with hypertension prevalence compared to those consuming lower levels of alcohol. And you may have heard that alcohol, but wine especially, is good for the heart, but I don't think high blood pressure is good for anyone's heart. Okay, and again, epidemiologic studies of dietary fiber and blood pressure indicate that blood pressures are lower in vegetarian populations than in omnivorous populations. Clinical studies also indicate a fairly consistent blood pressure lowering effect of high fiber diets in normal as well as hypertensive subjects. And I would probably say more plant-based, not vegetarian, because fiber is present in whole food plant-based diet, not animal products. There is no fiber really. Okay, although studies have provided evidence of similar blood pressures among twins, siblings, and other first-degree relatives, lifestyle factors play a big role. Therefore, the tendency to develop hypertension remains dormant unless one or more environmental influences activate the mechanisms that raise blood pressure. So this sounds to me like it's more of a lifestyle disease than anything hereditary. And just because your mother or some relative had high blood pressure, that doesn't mean that you are going to necessarily have it unless your lifestyle is the same as that relative, perhaps. Okay, so then we can conclude from there that genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And also, I also found this interesting. It says habitual high salt intake appears to have a major effect on hypertension risk in susceptible people, but these findings are inconclusive because it's difficult to determine just who is susceptible and also who is more sensitive to high sodium levels. And Let's just remember that when they say salt, they don't usually mean Himalayan pink salt or Celtic salt. They usually mean the table salt, which has only 2 minerals and is very harmful for you. And in one of the quotes also, I have read that table salt is only a little bit inferior in its toxicity to alcohol. So that's how bad the table salt is. And I personally have found that people who have implemented the lifestyle changes that I'll suggest later have found that they can use pink Himalayan salt or Celtic salt without having any elevated elevated pressure. Okay, so the lifestyle choices we're talking about is mainly a whole food, plant-based diet. As we mentioned, that's where fiber is. And try to use the following foods in your diet regularly, and that is radish, parsley, which naturally dilates capillaries, cayenne pepper, which regulates blood pressure and improves blood vessel flexibility and tones the blood vessels, and water. It's pretty logical, and if you have to take only one thing from this, is drink lots of water. About 2.7 litres for females, depending on your weight, and then about 3 litres or more for males, again depending on your weight. And of course there are correct ways and incorrect ways of drinking water as well. Also, hibiscus tea, good for the gut and liver as well, sugar and cholesterol levels, fevers, depression, weight loss, UTIs, increases circulation and metabolism, etc. So hibiscus tea especially is very, very good. And it's actually one ingredient that is used in a lot of weight loss teas. Vitamin E, this is about a supplement, which is an antioxidant and a potent blood thinner. Cherries, because of their folate levels especially, they help with blood pressure. Magnesium citrate as a supplement again. Valerian root, which thins the blood and lowers the blood pressure. This can be made into a tea, and it's very good for depression as well. Hawthorn berries for heart health and for blood pressure, again really, really good. Pineapple for reducing blood clotting. Grapefruit, ground flax or linseeds, because of their omega-3s, they are very good for thinning the blood and making it actually more easy for the blood to pass through the blood vessels. The chervil, white willow bark tea, and garlic. And I just want to mention as well that we've had really good success with my mum when she implemented these lifestyle changes. She was on blood pressure medication for quite a long time, and she was actually very skeptical and afraid of using these lifestyle changes. But I recommended she doesn't get off her blood pressure medication, because you don't want to do that unless you see that you can do without it. And you have to work with your healthcare provider, obviously, to do that. But what happened with her was, in winter especially, her blood pressure would go up quite high. But after doing all of these things, and especially there is a remedy that I'll share, she's able to not have her blood pressure medication anymore, and she was surprised, but I wasn't. So, what we should avoid, even if we are on a whole food plant-based diet, we should avoid fried and fatty foods as they thicken the blood. Refined foods, which lack fiber, which is sugar, white flour products, white rice, as they thicken the blood. And the higher percentage of your diet is fresh fruits and vegetables, the better for avoiding clots. Avoid inflammatory foods such as fermented foods. One of them was wine, as I mentioned before, but vinegar, soy sauce, cheese, they increase the likelihood of clotting as well. So I haven't included any studies on stress or any other factors that affect blood pressure, but I can tell you that definitely stress affects blood pressure, and anything that constricts the blood vessels will affect your blood pressure. And I have seen this around me happening in my relatives and other people when they are stressed. And you know that when the pregnant lady goes into labor, the blood pressure will go up as well. So elevated stress levels and other factors obviously will affect that. Coffee does the same thing, constricts the blood vessels, and that's one of the reasons when you get off coffee you'll have headaches. That's not because you need coffee, but that's because it's been constricting your blood vessels, and now the blood is just rushing to your brain in high amounts. So I'll just tell you one thing about stress that is very obvious, that stress affects high blood pressure. My parents live on the 8th floor, and April, she likes to look out the window, and my parents are quite afraid of that. And they were taking all measures possible for April not to look down the window. And one time my mum saw how she was looking down the window and her body was too far into, like she was more outside than inside. And that whole day we were trying to bring my blood pressure and my mum's blood pressure down, because it just went up really high because of the stress and the scare of it. So I guess it can do it to anyone. And that's why avoiding cold weathers, especially in winter, that can happen. Avoiding cold weathers, avoiding coffee, and all of these things mentioned will help. And warm showers actually do help with high blood pressure. It tends to lower the blood pressure, or warm baths. Okay, so this is one remedy that my mum uses that helps her a lot. And depending on how high your blood pressure is, this is what you do. So half a teaspoon of ground or minced ginger, half a teaspoon of ground or minced turmeric again, a third of a teaspoon of white willow bark, and 250 to 300 mils of water. So this is all mixed together in a powder form. If the willow bark is powdered, it's even better, but if not, you have to steep it for longer. But pour hot water over it, let it sit for 10 to 30 minutes, or up to 2 hours, but you can actually let it sit overnight if you know you're going to drink it in the morning. When you're ready to drink, mix it through, divide it into 2 servings, or depending on how high the blood pressure is. If it's very urgent, drink it all at once. Of course, this is not to mention that if you have sensitivities with your stomach, turmeric can irritate a little bit, but that's about it. If you are taking this as a preventative measure, you can take it twice a day, especially in winter. So I want to mention, of course, that you're encouraged to consult your healthcare provider before making drastic changes in your diet or lifestyle. And if you're taking blood pressure medication regularly, please work with your doctor to come off it or reduce the dosage. Thank you very much.